On three.
Reed Richards, the leader of the Fantastic Four, had a big idea. How can one man solve everything? Well, as it turns out, you can't. And Reed Richards
Hmm.
learns that the hard way in Jonathan Hickman's run
Reed
on
Richards,
Fantastic
the leader of
Four,
the
which
Fantastic Four, had a
includes
big
art
idea.
by many great contributors. We will talk a lot about their art and their work throughout. To have this conversation about Dark Reign Fantastic Four. So if you're curious about what we're going to be covering in this particular book club, it's the Dark Reign Fantastic Four, first 5 issues of that, and then the core proper Fantastic Four run by Jonathan Hickman from the beginning all the way until FF Volume 1, Number 5. So we are covering quite a bit of ground here today, and to have this conversation with me, we have Cale.
What's up? Four dogs?
Fantastic dogs.
I don't like it.
Hmm.
We've got Marco.
What's up, fantastic dogs?
And I'm Sean. Thank you guys for being here, whether you are live or in the future. Like the Fantastic Four would go on to be later in this run, we are three because we are
Whoa.
Tylerless. So it is
Eaten by
almost,
bugs.
Ooh, do we plan that
Probably
out?
what's gonna happen to him, actually.
He is a fan of
yeah,
vor, so
there's a high
Hey,
likelihood of him being eaten by bugs. Thank you for being here with us, whether you are live or in the future. Make sure you smash that like button.
clobber it.
Yeah, yep, that clobber it, please do. And strap in because we are going to have a rousing conversation about Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four. This run was chosen by our patrons who voted over on patreon.com/the comics pals, but it was also nominated on by you guys, the everyday listener. We will talk to you a little bit later about how you can nominate books for next month's book club because that is somehow fast approaching. We are nearly in July. We will get into that later on in the show. Now, first question. Is this your first time, Marco and Cale, reading this run on Fantastic Four?
Nope.
uh, partly no, mostly yes.
Okay. And what did you guys think about it when you initially read it?
Uh,
Loved it.
yeah, same. I think for me, I was very much a Marvel newbie, and the first one of the first trades that I ever randomly picked up, I hadn't realized this was the Fantastic Four series by Hickman. Um, and yeah, I was blown away the first time, and coming back to it to see it in more of a totality. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, I I've always loved the Fantastic Four. I want to say I watched the cartoon as a kid. Um, so I've long had a love of the Fantastic Four, and I've read stuff off and on, but uh I didn't read this as it was coming out, but I did read it collected not too long after, trade by trade. So, um, yeah, it reads just as strong that way.
I read some of this when it was coming out. I think I read the material that we covered here while it was coming out. I had problems with some aspects of this that have more to do probably with who I was at the time than the actual quality of the material. Needless to say, this is not Hickman's first rodeo at Marvel. By this point, he had already done Secret Warriors, which was if not his first project at Marvel, one of his earliest, and it was an impressive book unto itself. Fantastic Four was really the book where I think we started to recognize Hickman as a big name. And of
Definitely.
course, he would go on to have lots of success at Marvel, still is today. But this was the test. This was the proving ground. Could Jonathan Hickman take the Fantastic Four, a group of characters who A lot of Marvel's legacy is tied to, of course, so many of the greatest writers and artists to grace Marvel have done work for the Fantastic Four, but certainly there were aspects of them that could be seen as quaint or old style. Mark Miller had a run on the Fantastic Four that's very uneven just before Jonathan Hickman jumped on board. And so he had big shoes to fill, but also a lot to prove. What we're going to talk about today, of course, is did he get it done? Did he prove his worth? Is this the reason why we are living in a Hickman world? We'll go all the way back to the beginning, and we'll talk about Dark Reign, Fantastic Four. This was, of course, written by Jonathan Hickman way back in March of 2009, with art by Sean Chen, inks by Lorenzo Ruggiero, colors by John Rauch, letters by Russ Woot. This part I actually don't think I had read at the time. I don't think I had ever read this.
Same. Yeah, this was the first time. I had jumped straight into Fantastic Four by Hickman, not the Dark Reign pieces. But funny enough, following the Dark Avenger stuff, there were some like Dark Reign things that like kind of crossed over. So I don't know if you saw in the app, Kill, I had a few like random things open because I was just
Yeah, it's a
like,
pain in the ass.
yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah. I had tangentially was just exploring some of the Dark Reign things, and so this was like, oh shit, more cool.
Yeah, so this is what kicks off Hickman's run. I think Hickman's run is very readable without this, but it's very much a stealth launch for, the run we would ultimately get. It's called The Bridge. And the framing of this story is really like the Dark Reign connection piece is really flimsy. Mostly it has to do with the fact that um, you know, Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four aren't actually on the side of Norman Osborn. And so he wants to um, kind of let them know that they're operating on borrowed time and things like that. The rest of the family sort of goes, they're on a mission accidentally through time. But Reed, the story really focuses on Reed and his creation of the bridge, which is a very interesting device that he builds, and it kind of allows him to look into alternate dimensions. And the reason he does it is because he wants to find a place where things could have gone better. The recent history, Civil War, Secret Invasion, everything else. He wants to find a world where those things went better and what happened to make them go better. What did you guys think about this as an analysis of Reed, in particular, the Reed Richards of the era?
Felt fitting, or for what we come to see. I think it feels fitting. He's curious. He's obsessive. Uh, One track mind in a lot of cases, and to a fault. And so the some of that obsessiveness coming through, and there's a instance at the beginning where he's just kind of rambling, science goobly gobbly stuff. Oops. And it Johnny's like, hey, I feel like the dumb kid in class, and it almost felt like a precursor to a lot of what comes after, because we get thrown into so many directions, we get new concepts flung at us, and so I almost took this as like a meta concept. The bridge, we're bridging what you were reading from Fantastic Four. This is like a flavor of the wacky shit that we're reading, and yes, a bridge is a construct in the actual arc that we're gonna be speaking about. But also get ready, like tie your shoes, put your belt on, because we're gonna go to some wacky places, and we can play with some concepts.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. And what I really noticed, I think I did read this when it came out because Fantastic Four was one of the few Dark Reign titles I was interested in. But it not only did it, was the Council of Reeds and everything that happens in it on Reed's angle very, very interesting. Hickman has this way of tying absolutely everything together, even through these 5 issues. That just it's really incredible how you can, watch him like take the needle and thread and just like weave it through the panels and the with the thread of the storyline, and it's so clever.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's very clear why Hickman became the anointed one, and you can see it very early on, even in just this, the way he's able to um effortlessly make this stuff not only function but have meaning, and feel relevant and valuable. It's so impressive, and you know, like I got to read what Hickman was doing before this, because the first Hickman I ever read, like I said, was Secret Warriors, but he came to Marvel fully formed. This doesn't
Mm.
feel at all like somebody's first or second major shot at bat. Hickman came in supremely talented right out the gate. Patrick Zay said, "'Tis the clobbering hour," and I actually have a note that says exactly that. That's the other thing about Hickman that you get a lot throughout this run, and it's established pretty early on. He's willing to have fun too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah.
It's very easy to when I sat down to read this, I think I said this on the show. I got sort of lost in my own sort of modern Hickman disappointment. Post X-Men, we're in the middle of Imperial right now. He's sort of said what his current trajectory is, and I just like I'm kind of bummed about Hickman right now. But then I sat down to read this and I let myself just like get washed over by it. And like even like the heady stuff is really fun and it's engaging and you're thinking about so much while you're reading this. He's just, you know, uh, he weaves a tapestry, for dozens of issues.
And it starts here, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the groundwork gets the level it's developed at this point. So I thought that was the most impressive thing was, oh, like he doesn't stop at a concept. It all fits into his larger narrative, the larger thing that he wants to tell. I actually read back. I actually ended up reading all the way through to 602.
I
Just because
did
I was,
600. Yeah.
yeah, just because like I was on a run, and it all just pays off, dude.
Yeah.
So like the thought that this happens in this Dark Reign stuff tangentially to the launch of the other series is kind of wild. Like he is he's an architect.
I mean, that alone, starts at 4570.
Something like that, yeah.
571,
Uh,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah. To, 602, that's a 30 issue run there. Um, and he went further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
He milks the
wild.
material, like, and not milk it, like it's planned out. Like he's able to get a lot out of the things that he builds out because it feels like he knows the limits. He knows the max limits to the world, and he only presents you in like bubbles. Oh, you can only go to here, and then it's like, oh shit, actually we pull back and
Yeah.
we expand out farther, and he plays with that the concepts of sizes like that.
So I want to take us back, if I can, to 2009, in our minds, to talk about the way that people perceived Reed Richards at the time, because it's very important to what Hickman is doing. Now, this is a couple few years removed from Civil War, where a lot of people felt that Reed Richards was written very out of character. Notably, at the time, he decides to build a prison in the negative zone where he sends some of his friends, allies, heroes. Um, and a lot of people were very angry about that. They couldn't justify his actions in the face of the character that he had been before, sort of this really genius but fun-loving family man who would do anything it took to save his family and friends, but would never put his friends at risk in this way. And so Hickman's responsibility, and also coming off a Mark Miller run that not everybody loves, I'll say that. Hickman's responsibility, and he talked about this, was to make Reed's decision making make sense. To sort of say it's not out of character what he did in the Civil War and what he did in Mark Miller's run, because there's this other aspect to Reed's character and personality that we haven't fully explored yet. Granted, Hickman is inserting a lot of things into continuity, but it sort of retroactively redeems the character. At least that's what Hickman was trying to do, and to build on what had come before. So he creates this idea, and Reed establishes it very early in the Dark Reign issues. He says, "quote The only thing that matters when assessing a situation are the facts. You have to put everything else aside." That is a hugely important piece of dialogue, because that is exactly how Reed was clearly thinking up until the moment he meets the Council of Reeds, and they tell him that none of them have family or friends, because those things don't matter when you're talking facts. So when you look at it like that, it's easy to understand why Reed made the decisions he made during the Civil War, because he's only thinking about the facts. But there's a cost to that is established later on. I love that piece of this story.
It makes it so seamless.
Yep.
Because like I like it's a scientific thing. Like it, it even it's hard to say retroactively, but like that never felt out of character to me because of his room, right? He did the equations, he did all the things, and to his mind, and he's the smartest person on the planet or whatever. In his mind, this is the solution. And he tries to take the time to work through, all of the uh uh Civil War issues and everything, and that's what he comes up with. He has the empirical data, and that's what he thinks is going to work, and that's what he goes by.
Yeah. That's an excellent point, and it's like if you could somehow retroactively insert, and it wouldn't work for a lot of reasons, but if you could retroactively insert that idea and this line of dialogue and some of the stuff that happens, that Reed expresses in these early issues, if you could insert those to just before Civil War, I think a lot of people would have understood where he was coming from a lot more.
Hmm.
Marco, do you feel a difference in the way that Reed is portrayed based on the, relatively limited encounters you've had with him? Like, what is your perspective about Reed as a character?
This it's methodical. It's always well informed. It comes from a place that is like fact based, but the the facts can change. The facts are they're malleable because that's what the scientific method is. The process is right. Those things can change. So like when, for example, he meets the Council of Reeds and they express to him, "Oh yeah, we had to give up all of our families." Right. The fact there has changed. The fact is that my kids, my family are a material consideration that have to like it's a built-in parameter now. Like that's the way that I was eating all of his dialogue moving forward is they are parameters. There's the moment where we're jumping ahead a little bit, but or quite a bit, but there's a moment way down the line where he gets sent back through the Emeritus portal or whatever it is to where he needs to be, and he needs to be with his girl, bro. I'm like, word. You pass those fucking scissors. She needs to cut that little rose. That's right, because because that's a parameter now. That's a consideration. That is a fact that he is unable to no longer contest with. He has to consider that in anything he does moving forward. So that's what I feel like his brain's Legos, dude. They're plug and play. They can transform. They can do whatever.
Yeah, I think that, and again, it is getting a little bit ahead, but I feel like talking about Reed is important because he's the main character of this.
Hmm.
Um, and I think clearly the character that Hickman is most interested in, and interested in kind of dealing with, and he finds compelling ways to examine Reed's personality, far more compelling than any other iteration of Reed I've ever seen, because there is an altruism to Reed's personality. He can be read as egotistical, but I don't, at least in Hickman's version, I don't think that's where he ever comes from. I think it's more like, factually speaking, I am the smartest person that exists. And that is something that I see as a responsibility.
Hmm.
But if I'm the smartest guy and me actually putting my time towards solving problems will solve the problems of humanity, am I not being selfish by doing anything other than that?
Hmm.
That's a good question. And a lot of people would say, well, the answer is very obvious. You should be a good dad, right? That's what people always shit on Goku, right, for being a bad father. Um, but in this case, when you're talking about the literal smartest man on the planet Earth, what is the right thing to do? What is right doing in this context?
The responsibility is now again just an input. It's a factor. It's a fact that has to be taken into consideration, and that's what that first initial like mini arc is uh, with Reed. Is yes, he is the smartest person in the room in New York in the universe at any given moment. So I mean not the universe, but at any given moment, and that bears a weight, and it's contrasted with his dad, and and I think there's also like a level of passing along a level of I don't want to say trauma, but of there's a pattern of behavior that gets passed along generationally, and it's also breaking cycles.
Hmm.
Yeah, I and there's a lot of work that Hickman does utilizing the wizard character and his many like offspring, which they're
Yeah.
really clones, but the way he treats them, he's so callous. He sacrificed everything for genius,
Hmm.
including kindness, which Reed is always kind, even when he's not, the best dad or the most present. But the wizard is used here to juxtapose with Reed as a father, but also Reed's father as a father, which is a character that to this point I had never thought about. Reed Richards' father? Who
Yeah.
cares?
Oh, Hickman does.
Yeah.
I had some issues with Nathaniel Richards. Are we gonna get to those?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I didn't finish the run, so I don't totally remember how that gets resolved, but I felt like he was sort of um uneven, and it may be like, in some of the flashbacks where he showed up, he's seen as this, he's shown as this like, loving dad who's like stoic but wise, um and then, we learn his story, where he has to fight different universal versions of himself or whatever to the death, and he's the last one standing. um when he shows up to live with the Fantastic Four and the family and everything, it's he feels like a different person than when we saw him earlier, and not just the flashbacks, but there's a tone that's there, that's sharp and critical, that wasn't there before. And I couldn't always tell if it was, this is who this guy is, or if it was like misinterpreting, the artist misinterpreting sort of the tone that was being conveyed. Not that what the artist did was wrong, just it was maybe different from what Hickman intended or wrote for the moment. Specifically, I'm thinking of when they sit down to dinner for the first time with Spider-Man and everything.
Yep.
And Reed mentions terraforming the blue area of the moon or whatever. And everyone's like, oh yeah, okay, that's great. Let's do that. And Nathaniel goes, actually, that's a terrible idea. And the room just stops. And he goes, oh, everybody just Reed says an idea and we're all cool with it. Like it just like it felt it felt slightly playful, but also like sharp and critical in a way that doesn't it didn't connect in that moment.
I found that, yeah, I found that odd. It was an odd beat to what we had been seeing previously, and I largely took that to be that's who he was. The flashbacks we get are largely, especially at the beginning, are largely of when he's a kid. But he's softer in the way that he speaks to Reed, but now it felt like he's an equal, and this is just how what this guy is. He's not the same way that he might talk to like Valeria, for example, where like he has that kindness. And not to say that the dad isn't kind, but now he's just like, okay, now we're two collaborators,
But he's not fucking nice either.
he's not, but he's not nice. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. And that was palpable because you're right. That tone, that scene was like all happy family. We're having dinner, and he just kills that shit.
Go ahead.
Well, just right before that, we have the before he comes to live with uh the Fantastic Four and the family. We have the story. We get his sort of origin story where he comes in, uh, 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 um, grabs young Reed and Ben and Victor, and they go to they go. I don't remember where they go, but they go blast people and fight together. And that that guy felt like a different guy from the one at the dinner table.
Yeah,
I thought that there were multiple reasons for his behavior. I think Marco illuminated one of them, which is they're now sort of peers almost. Um, but also the idea that Nathaniel's from the future. He's seen what Reed does, and he's aware that this version of Reed, that Reed in general, makes mistakes. And so he's making everybody in the room question Reed because questioning Reed is clearly a good thing to do because Reed's
Mm.
actions have led to this.
that's a great point.
Um,
Yeah,
and it happens during the arc in which Reed is sort of introduces the antagonist. Not our Reed necessarily, but the concept of Reed Richards,
Yeah.
because now they're dealing with the council. So that's sort of how I took that.
Okay.
yeah.
Did you guys have any other things you wanted to say about the Dark Reign piece? Because it's funny, and there's like the Norman bit where he shoots at the kids, which is funny. And the kids are running around with toy guns and stuff. Franklin shoots at Norman, but I just didn't think there was a lot of meat on the bone outside of the Reed stuff, which I thought was tremendous.
It's just set up for the run. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a romp. That's fine.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I have no real criticisms of it. And the biggest thing that it sets up is that Reed lied to Sue. He told her he would destroy what he built, and he did, but he rebuilt it. So I guess he sort of got away. Keep in mind, all the married men out there, listen, these are the ways that you can play word games.
Don't do it.
Don't do it, dude.
Don't do
Hey,
it.
Just tell her,
it didn't
bro.
work for Reed. It didn't work for Reed.
The smartest man in the Marvel universe.
Yep.
Take that home with you.
He
Don't
said,
worry.
honey, I made a mistake.
Don't worry. I know my place. The dog's the smartest man in this house.
And it's funny because later there's a scene where the Nathaniel, the dad's also like, "You told her this?" He's like, "Yes." "You told her this?" "Yes." He's like, "Good, Reed. Don't lie to your wife."
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Dad.
But yeah, then we get into the actual like Fantastic Four core book. And again, that's where we're introduced to the Council of Reeds, which happens very, very early on. And nowadays, I think this is a bit old hat, but for us at the time when this came out, that was crazy. That there are all these different versions of Reed, and there's even the page where three of them have Infinity Gauntlets, which was cool as hell.
Hmm.
That was an object that really wasn't around much at the time, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't think it played into anything that was going on at the time. So seeing it there was really cool. And you get to see all of what Reed can be. There's the scene where the one version of Reed says, "Hey, I figured out how to feed people across the universe by having these planets where all we do is grow food or whatever." And all these different versions of Reed, they've solved the problem of Doctor Doom by making him a vegetable. They solved the problem of Galactus. They're solving everything. And Reed learned, I am the one who can solve everything. And now he's surrounded by all these different versions of him who have figured out how to do just that. How do you not become an asshole? You're the greatest man of all time.
And I wonder to what degree, like, ego played into each of these characters, because they needed a certain amount of that to, like, yes, you are the smartest people in the universe, yes you are, but to abandon your families, like, to pay the consequence, there has to be that ego as well, that our Reed was unable to separate, or unable to, like, cross a line. And I think that gets shown with Nathaniel, because there's very much a feeling of, in this arc, there's like little flashbacks kind of interspersed in the first three issues, and he is he's talking to his son as he grows, and expressing to him how he will be, this great man, because you're gonna really see the direction. Oh, and by the way, I gotta dip out, right? Like you have to be to some degree self-involved to be able to do that, and that feels sad, but there's like an understanding from Reed's part, because he has the same capacity, the same understanding of, there's an altruism that goes beyond me, and I can't feel sad about that, because that makes sense, even if it's a feeling that makes sense.
I also think like to be truly in love with someone, in the way that like Reed and Sue are, there is a degree of surrendering that ego. And especially when we find out that the other Reeds don't have their families, I think their egos are massively in charge of what's happening. You know, they're not even doing it for glory, like the way Doom is in the current Doom War or whatever it's called. Uh
One world
it's
under
it
Doom.
Okay, thank you. Um it's they're not even doing it so that people will raise up and say, "Oh, Reed Richards is the greatest man alive." They're doing it because they know they're the smartest ones around, and there's no one to check them on it.
Not them, who, literally.
It's a self-satisfaction. You're
Mm-hmm.
not looking for the approval of others. You know you got it. And it pleases you to be able to be the one who has it. And I took the Council of Reeds, or rather, excuse me, I took the Future Foundation as a sharp contrast to the Council of Reeds, where there's that issue of the book where notably Reed shaves, so he gets rid of the aftershave and the beard and everything like that, and he tells everybody at that TED talk that they all suck and they don't think deep enough. And then he goes home
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
he
yeah.
talks to everybody there, all the smart kids and everybody else, and he says, "We need to do this." So he brings in these children and unique thinkers and an android to help him think about the problems of the world and try to solve them from different angles that Reed is not capable of looking at things from.
Mm.
And I don't think he was. He doesn't say that, but I don't think he's thinking I'm not capable. I think he's thinking Reed Richards across the multiverse is not capable of thinking this way. So Council of Reeds, bad. Future Foundation, good, because it's the collective, diverse good, not the Reed Richards good.
It's literally the definition of diverse. It's moloids, it's aqua people, it's an 8-year-old super genius, it's a galaxy former, it's a kid that's been a superhero since he was in diapers. It's such the son of a villain, right? It's
Yeah.
an eclectic group of children that uh you know aren't old white men.
Yes, not yet. But
Wow.
but yeah, no, like he went to the kids. He went to the children and said, "What are your ideas?" And I love that, and I love that that's a bridge between reads. It's a bridge from the Reed who isn't necessarily egotistical or arrogant, but is self-serving, um, and the version of Reed who's willing to hear others' ideas and work collaboratively.
I think that was the one of the big keys is that collaboration and it being. I think there was a level of understanding from Reed that Valeria is going to surpass him, and so if pointed in the right direction from this start, like building that foundation, what can she achieve in the same way that Nathaniel kind of did with Reed? Is what can be achieved if I point this person and think of the long term trajectory of that. How can I like exponentially increase productivity or research or whatever it is, right? And build that foundation of good. But that starts with him being a present father.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've spent a bit of time on Reed here so far. One of the things that I wanted to talk about early on are the kids, particularly Franklin and Valeria, who had, I think, more recently become like core aspects of the cast. Valeria, for a while, was hiding the fact that she was super intelligent. Um, and Franklin obviously had been depowered earlier in a prior run. But I think they're great additions as cast members who can speak and have agency and everything else because they add a little bit of chaos, especially Franklin. And Valeria is good for it too, but also just some other voices in the room. Like whenever you remove, like when you say, okay, Reed's gonna go on this mission or and Sue's gonna go on this mission, it can get really like, all right, there's just two characters together. But when you add the kids, it gives Ben and Johnny a responsibility, who aren't the smartest people. They've got to protect the kids. It adds some more interplay and also the hilarity. The kids are so much a part of what makes this run light, whereas it might have felt a lot heavier without them.
They, I think they help to challenge uh Reed and Sue more Reed than anything else. I feel like Reed has to like contain a lot of the time. But yeah, sometimes they're just being little scamps, and that's fun. That definitely adds like as you mentioned, some levity to this. I think my favorite's probably Valeria because of how she goes out of her way to similarly do the right thing that she thinks is the right thing because she thinks she's so smart and it also has unintended consequences. So it's funny how like she follows in the footsteps and Reed has to curtail that, and I'm sure that's like a mirror for him as well, being like, this is fucking this is me, I get it. Um, there's a I don't know if I have it on the screen at one point, but there's a moment where he's trying to escape and like hack something, and uh, he's like, "Oh, sorry, that's good try, but you're punished for another 30 minutes. Love you." Like you can't have those moments without the kids, and I think it also unlocks something for Reed and for Sue. It gives them this additional role. Yes, she is uh uh Sue as part of the Fantastic Four. Yes, she is the now queen regent of the old Atlantis, but she's also a mother, and that's such an important identity, that you can switch between all those things.
Yeah, yeah. The way that the other characters around the kids are enhanced by the kids' presence is a big part of what makes this work so well.
Yeah, Hayden says it in the chat, and he says it makes the team feel more like a family in a way, and I think that's 100% the case. You know, any Fantastic Four book that doesn't feature the kids is just a superhero book. It just is. But as soon as you bring the kids into it, it becomes a book about a family because they're all, with the inclusion of the kids, like they're all tighter knit. They're Reed and Sue, obviously, mother and father, but then Ben and Johnny are also looking out for the kids, and they they all have their own specific interactions, and it works just all the way through.
It's so fun. And I think the testament to how well the kids work is the fact that they're now in every single Fantastic Four story. I mean, even the MCU debut, you know, Sue, well, there may be people who don't want to know spoilers, so I'll leave it out. But it's pretty clear that the kids will have an involvement in all forms of Fantastic Four stories, and I think that's how it should be. Um, they don't feel like they're not really even that big of they're a found family to begin with, right? But when you add the kids into the mix, now they really are a family, a familial environment. And I just love how Ben and Johnny, who I really want to spend some time talking about here if we can, they are their uncles. And they have to balance their own superheroics with their own personal lives, but also making sure that these kids are okay. And I love that aspect of the story.
Yeah, Hayden's hideout here in the chat says Ben is the responsible uncle, and Johnny's the cool uncle. He sure wants to get them their toys. Uh,
The early bit that Franklin is a big fan of
it's
Spider-Man.
so good.
Tremendous.
He's like, no. He's like, oh, here's your, second. There's your second favorite hero, right? And it's funny too, because like obviously they have a good relationship, so just layers, man. Um, I definitely like the. If I can pull it up on the screen. There's there's very much like a silliness to Johnny and Ben. They have such a back and forth dynamic. I have a page up right now where Sue is kind of like explaining to them the mission going on. Here's what's going on, and Ben's leaning back in the chair, trying to balance on the back feet. Johnny's, just like, hey, shut up, like, I'm trying to listen. They're just goofy. They're goofing around. They feel playful and kitty in that way. Not kitty, but like uh, they very much can bond with the kids on that level of playfulness, and
Mm.
that's another aspect that you can have with a mother, but she has to be stern at some point, or has to be rein people in the same way she reins Reed in. Uh, Reed is Reed. He's gonna be a father. He's gonna be that um the stalwart of knowledge. But then you got Uncle Johnny that I can go and say I have a problem.
It's so fun. And then once they introduce the Moloid kids, they're the best. The
Yep.
Ben.
Yep.
Oh yeah, the Johnny.
There are some Hickmanisms here. And it's funny because we're now so far removed from this being current. But even at the time, some of this stuff was like, all right, Hickman, I see you. You like to do this shit. And so the idea of a city where people will hyper evolve or devolve, for example, that's something that Hickman was doing as early to my knowledge as his run in the Ultimate Universe, where there's the two Zorns or whatever. And they cut and they each have cities that are full of hyper advanced people and all that shit. That happens again during his X-Men run. Uh, of course, then there's the cliffhangers that aren't followed up on traditionally. A lot of the issues in this story aren't they're not one and done, but they'll establish something that gets resolved later on. Like they don't, it
Yeah.
doesn't always immediately pick up from where it leaves off. And then the other thing, well, there's robots versus humans, which Hickman loves, data pages, time skips, um, all that stuff is all over the place.
It feels frenetic. Like, I think it makes the book not feel slow. Sometimes a little confusing in moments, but I think he still balances out. It doesn't feel as refined as some of the later stuff, like Hox Pox, where yes, we
Mm.
had the iterations of Powers of 10, and you could still follow the narrative. Here, sometimes I'm like, okay, wait, hold on, what happened last issue? I thought this person got into a fight, and now we're suddenly in like the this like some other place. Like I'm confused.
I
Mm.
felt like I was reading Ultimate Spider-Man.
Word, a month passed.
That said, though, I felt like those data pages, at at the end of those issues of Fantastic Four were like they almost sort of felt to me like, well, listen, this could get canceled at any point. So even if it shuts off right here, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't know if the data pages annoyed me, but I did kind of like bum out sometimes when it was like the New World stuff. Oh, 100 years later, 200. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
don't care.
I just couldn't follow that. I wanted to care, but like the characters that were there, I was just like, I don't know who this is. I have no connection to this. I don't know. Like I've not been given a reason to care about this guy. What what are we doing here?
Seeing the pages though, it was definitely one of those moments of like, oh hey, look at that, like there it is.
There's my man.
Yeah, I see you, guy.
The one I did like was that we got to see um, Banner Jr. go from Banner Jr. to the Maestro because so much time had passed, and the Maestro, the idea that the Maestro was always the end point for the Hulk, like we actually got to see him evolve into that. I thought that was pretty cool, but it's like, all right, so that happened.
What was the deal with Banner Jr. and the Maestro? Like, what's the connection there?
Just that like the idea with the Hulk is that ultimately he gets to the point where he becomes the Maestro for whatever reason after enough time passes. So that's
Yeah,
all that really was. He was angry because I forgot why he was angry.
just a different version of the Hulk, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
I was like, I don't know what this is. And again, you know, like none of that is in there. Same as this Ted Castle guy. It's just like,
I want to say that was from the Mark Miller run, the New World establishment. I
okay,
want it because even the Galactus that's buried under the world is the Galactus that they killed for New World, not the
Oh,
one that the Reeds killed.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, yeah, I guess we should talk about that that stuff, the New World stuff. And I mean the way Galactus gets into the picture with all that, that's maybe my favorite part of the story. But the New World aspects, I thought it was a little odd for Hickman to go so hard with that, considering it wasn't a concept that was established in his run. It requires you to have been reading the prior run to know what this is all meaning. And if you didn't, um, it's a little jarring, I think.
Yeah, like I said, I had a lot of trouble with it, but I sort of wonder if it was just a convenient place for Hickman to sort of pick Reed up and place him where he wanted him, in reference to the four cities situation,
Yeah.
um, and then also bring Galactus into the equation and really up the stakes.
yeah. was lost. I followed through just of the stuff in the moment, but because like that was also the things with like those Android people, right? The like the
Yeah.
multiple copies. Yeah, I was even that when that got introduced. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I think it's a lot like what Cale's saying. It just sort of allowed Hickman a convenience to bring Galactus and Silver Surfer into the fold and kind of let Galactus do some cool ass shit, which she definitely does get on to doing. Um, the book, I remember this time period really well, where we started to get teases about three, that there would be an arc coming to this book called Three, and one of the Fantastic Four would die. And so you can see Hickman setting up three different um three different scenarios under which one of the Fantastic Four could die. Reed is chilling with Galactus, which is always dangerous. Sue is now the Queen Regent of this underwater war, in Atlantis and all that shit, which I didn't care about at all. I thought that was very sort of whatever, flimsy. And then, of course, the stuff with Johnny and Ben, which Johnny really caused by turning on the negative zone fucking door and
Yep.
allowing Annihilus and allowing the Baxter building to come on their radar as a way into Earth to start the second annihilation wave. And there's an earlier conversation that Johnny has with Reed where Johnny fucked up and Reed tells him, look, man, you got to think about all these changes that we're all undergoing and who you want to be. And when your moment comes, are you going to be who you are? Something along those lines. And so
Yep.
there were a lot of things being set up as far as who's going to die. And in the moment, I really hated that. I remember being so annoyed because I was really like not a fan of superhero deaths in comics. And I just felt like it was a gimmick. Why should any of the Fantastic Four die? So I think sort of around this time, I might have either dropped off or I was just really frustrated.
Hmm.
Like Johnny, frustrated because he was trying to get his negative zone turned on. So
Come on.
Wow.
I reached for that. I reached for
Nice
that.
try.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it shows his like it obviously shows that he's responsible. Like when the going gets tough, he's gonna pull up. He's gonna try to do the right thing, albeit the things that he does has consequences. But I was invested at that point in like what was going on in the safety of the kids and the direction of Reed and what this all meant now because I also now have read Annihilation, so now I have an understanding of what that is and the implications for all this shit. I'm like, oh no, Johnny, you fucked up, idiot. And so when it finally came for that moment, and damn, I wish I pulled that splash page. But there is that splash page of just him getting overtaken and just kind of like in between the bugs. Man, I put it down for a second. I'm like, fuck, like that. It was built up so well. It had a great emotional payoff. So I was thoroughly invested, heartbroken when that happened.
Yeah, I actually remember the first time I read this, I was substitute teaching in Oklahoma. I say in a shop class. I don't remember exactly what class it was, but some coach's class, and the kids were all doing something. Meanwhile, I'm going through something horrendously traumatic. My best friend Johnny Storm is dying right in front of me.
Kid goes, Mr. Hot Dog, I chopped off my finger. Johnny lost his life, kid.
Do you mind?
I don't want us to get too far away from the Ben the Ben. The kids figuring out how to solve for Ben's physical affliction, what makes
Mm,
him the thing. That being sort of the first accomplishment of the Future Foundation, they can give Ben a week off in a year from being the thing. And he takes it, and it's a great moment where he takes it, and Johnny's like, "Oh my God, oh, you got to look in the mirror." And it's a joke that now he's more horrifying because he looks totally normal. And that's always been their dynamic, very playful, very funny. But then they go out on the town and they end up having a great few days. And that was one of my favorite issues of the series was the Ben focused one. They go out for a dinner, and I don't know if you guys caught it, but they go out with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Yep. They go see a couple of old friends. Yeah, I caught that.
Oh
That
wait,
was so
what?
cool. So cool. They go out and get into an old-fashioned brawl, and
Yep.
Ben can fight and like fight regular people and not kill them and just, get into a scrape like he used to. And he goes and sees Alicia, who doesn't have much of a presence during this run outside of a handful of moments with Ben. But for those of us that love Ben as a character, getting to see him go back and be with Alicia as himself is just such a big moment.
Huge.
And it was one of the reasons why I thought Ben was the one who was going to bite it. It's like you're giving him everything he wants. He's marked for death.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I love that issue.
Any other time that would have been the case.
Yeah.
It made he's always been like he's like the monster and the wrong skin, that kind of situation, so like that inherently has its tragedy. But for him to come out of that for that short amount of time, there's a question that Johnny asks him is where he's like, is this worth it? Because you're going to be losing so much. You're going to revert back to this for just a week. You're going to get used to it for that week. Are you going to lose something? And I love his take on it. It's so positive. He's gaining something, and because it's so short, he has to cherish it. And I really really thought that shows was emblematic of his character and who he is and what he feels and thinks about the world, the family, his place in the Fantastic Four. He's grateful to be there. He knows he's surrounded by good people, and that's what makes him part of the family. And that scene where he's with Alicia and they're just talking, and then afterwards he asks, hey Johnny, do you want kids? Because now he's like, oh shit, this could be a reality, right? Like all the future, the potential has suddenly expanded. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful issue.
Yeah.
It's Hickman showing us, and it's a version of Hickman that I sort of wish we got more often. Um, his deep thoughtfulness and ability to really, really mine the depths of characters to give you a moment that feels so raw and authentic for people that don't actually exist. Um, and as much as we talk about Hickman as the architect, sometimes we neglect Hickman as the guy who can write those really emotionally deep scenes. And I thought we got more than a few throughout this run on Fantastic Four, especially the later issues. Um, just a master, just a master. Oh, because you're saying that because in the movie she's played by Kerry Washington.
Yes.
Listen, that's that race swap.
Listen, when she came around, black people hadn't been invented yet.
Right, right.
Yep.
Yeah, I had
How
no
el-
idea.
how else were they going to get diversity into those Fantastic Four movies? They had to go find Jessica Alba, the whitest Spanish girl you could find in Hollywood at the time,
Yeah.
and they got Kerry Washington to play Alicia. But yes, Alicia in the comics is white.
Well, she also has red hair. And obviously that is code for, black people.
That's true. Well-known fact.
I don't know if code is the right word for that, but
It's not, but we carry on.
representative, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So I loved all that stuff. Now there's the underwater stuff. I didn't care about it all. Like, not only was it uninteresting, but it was also like, it felt like filler. I understand why they needed to tell that piece to get Sue in that place, and to give her something to do other than just be mom. But man, I didn't give a damn.
And it was for it being underwater, it was dry.
Yeah.
Like it didn't lead anywhere, and it like the resolution is basically just a flip. Namor shows up and says, "Oh no, these guys are all violent," and they say, "No, we're not," and that's it.
And then he just like attacks them in the
Yeah,
middle of diplomacy, and because of a technicality, she becomes the queen regent, and that's it.
yep.
And like, hey, now Namor, you have to do what I say. Which, you know what? He was very happy to be taking orders from her. So
He's smart to do it.
yeah, I would.
He was down.
Yo, he
He
was
was very
down
down.
bad. He said, "Oh, you hit me? You dare?" She says, "Not only do I dare, don't you even think about it."
He
Like
said, "Damn, all right."
it says, "Speak to me more. Say more."
Namor says, while you slept, the world changed, which is the exact same thing that Professor X shoots into
Mm,
the minds of all people on Earth during Hoxpox. I thought that was funny. I
Oh,
read that line. I was like, oh, that's familiar.
I
I
didn't notice
remember
that.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Um, when Galactus comes around to Earth, there's a great moment that just is like, it's exactly what the Fantastic Four are. This is the moment that defines the FF for me. Galactus comes to Earth. He's talking to Reed Richards. He's, sort of threatening him, like, "Hey, man, if you better be able to tell me that this future where I die isn't going to come to pass, because if it is, I'm killing everybody here." But Reed is having this conversation. Johnny Storm comes around, and Reed's like, "Look, man, you cannot come with me where we're going because you got to watch the kids." And Johnny tells him, "Oh yeah, Ben took the serum. He's regular Ben again." And Reed looks at him and he goes, "Fantastic." It's the intersection between the cosmic and the banal. Like that's a completely normal thing. Like, you got to go home and watch the kids. Ben is Ben, and I'm gonna go with Galactus to another planet real fast. Crazy.
it's the family aspect of it.
Yep.
Dad's got to go to work. Somebody's got to watch the kids.
Yep. That's who they are, man. I love it. I love it. And the other thing I loved while we're on the subject of Galactus is he's one of my favorite characters. If you listen to the show enough, you've heard me say that. And this is why. Um, when he trusts Reed Richards so much because he is also extremely logical. He recognizes that Reed Richards' mind is beyond humanity. Like, he's not just a regular person. He's got a universal mind. So he says to Reed, "If you can promise me that I will not die in the future, then I will leave your world alone." And Reed thinks about what he saw the other Reeds do. And he's like, "Yeah, I got it." So Galactus is like, "Okay, fine." But then he also says, somebody's going to pay for this shit. So he decides to destroy New World. And it's not like the denizens of New World are thinking about, all right, well, what are we going to do about this? Reed and everybody else are just like, we got to get the fuck out of here. There's nothing
Yeah.
we're going to do about this. We got to go.
Uh, in that process, I think he also shows like the reason why he's a superhero. He's like, hey, this is gonna blow up. Let's save a few people while we're at it. Like, we know we can do it. Let's try to do as much as we can.
I love how he says it in that tone exactly too.
Yeah,
We better do it.
guess we
Guess we
have to.
have to. Jinx. Yeah, that was a great piece of business. I really love that sequence. And I love that there are a lot of instances of this where, and I think this is something that Hickman is sort of commenting on. The characters that you associate as villains of the Fantastic Four traditionally are not the antagonists of the story. None of them are. Not even Doom. Not Doom, not Galactus, not Mole Man, not Mad Thinker, none of them. They're all just parts of the story. They all have a part to play. They all have a role, but they're not villains. We learn something about Reed through the Wizard. We learn about Doom. We learn about Reed and Valeria through Doom. We learn about Reed's importance through Galactus. Like every one of these special characters has something to say about the Fantastic Four, but they don't play their normal role. Just very unique stuff. We're at the end game now. And now, it's really comes down to who's gonna die. Is it gonna be Johnny? Is it gonna be Ben? Is it gonna be Reed? Is it gonna be Sue? And there's that moment where the invasion of the Annihilus wave is happening. And Ben and Johnny are trying to figure out who's gonna take the bullet. And Ben decides it's gonna be him. He had that big ass gun that was so cool. And Johnny pushes him through the door, and he decides he's going to be the one. This is his moment. And Ben is banging on that door. And as he's banging on the door, he starts transforming. And Steve Epting, who was doing the art throughout this period, does an amazing job. He starts banging, and as he's banging, he's transforming back into Ben. And by the end, he's just hammering on that door. There's nothing he can do. And Johnny dies. He goes out in a blaze of glory, as it were.
Wild. Build up. The tension where the kids are trying to solve it. Everything leading up to it. Like that was it under Hickman's pen, it felt like such a masterful stroke of having setup, having payoff, and then having this emotional core across all the characters. Because then the subsequent issue is pretty much a silent issue.
It's so pivotal, I think, because Johnny's not that character. But he literally picks Ben up and throws him.
Yeah.
So it shows not only that he is that character, but he takes that moment from Ben. And it was the way it needed to be.
Yeah, Johnny really isn't that guy, and I thought he got a really great hero moment. It's not who I thought would die by any means, even at the time. And I thought it was excellently done. The two issues that follow his death are phenomenal. The one where it's just the month of mourning, and you see what every character is kind of going through. The kids want to kill Annihilus. Reed looks at Annihilus through the negative zone door, and it's just almost like he's being taunted by him. Thing fighting with Hulk and Thor just to blow off steam. I had a hard time hanging on during that
Truly
scene.
one of the hard moments of this entire run that has transcended.
Unreal.
Early Dragotta art?
Yeah. Well, they team up obviously in East of West, but I think this might have been when they first started teaming up.
I feel like East of West was probably around the same time, actually.
Yeah. Could have very, very well.
So, yeah, you might be right, actually.
All of which represented so well. There's also the moment where
you're right.
Where Reed opens it up again and has the shirt.
Yep.
Goes back up and says, "Damn, what a fuck you."
Piece of shit.
Yeah.
And then the uncle's issue that tore me up. When Peter is speaking with Franklin about having both lost their uncles. It's a very, basic conversation, but it's like, man, Hickman wrote his ass off with that one. Franklin had the power to save his uncle. Franklin Richards is the most powerful character nearly in all of Marvel.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, he could have saved him. And Pete's like, hey, I've been there. I know I could have saved my uncle, and I didn't do it. Lesson learned, kid.
best you can do, right? It's a reality. It's a fact. It's it.
And I think that's the beauty of the Fantastic Four. Again, to go back to the kids making this book about family, is, you know, Franklin and Valeria have these moments where, they are setting themselves up to sort of follow in their elders' footsteps, and in this case, Franklin, being Spider-Man in this scenario. His uncle died and he could have done something. Valeria being just as smart as Reed, if not smarter, um, but she has to keep her ego in check. That they're getting these lessons, from family early on means they're going to be, they're already evolving into better heroes and adults later on.
And that's like the crux of those first three issues with Reed. Like his dad, ultimately, the goal is, hey man, I just be a better person.
Yeah.
Be a better man. That's the best you can do.
That man, that the conversation that Reed has with his father, when his father tells him that, be a better man, it really hit me hard because he's telling him what to do, but he's not leading by example.
Mm.
He's telling him that as he's about to leave his son again. And so it's really easy to see why not only Reed has some of those proclivities towards abandoning his family, but also why the Council of Reeds hate, or at least one of them does, and I think he says they all do, hate their father
Mm.
because he doesn't lead by example. Presumably, he
Yeah.
tells them all that same thing, but he still goes away.
And he's the only Reed that has done otherwise. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
He's the superior. At that point, he's the superior Reed. He sacrifices the greater good. He has the capacity, but he continues on because presumably Valeria will now succeed even the Council of Reeds. Yeah, that issue, dude, that page turn, I started crying. That shit hit me hard.
Yeah, man. There's so many amazing moments throughout this book, dude. Um, but that actually takes us to the end of the proper series and then spins off into FF, where Spider-Man joins the team. How did you guys feel about Spider-Man as the chosen? I mean, of all the people you could choose, how did you feel about Spider-Man being the one to join the FF?
Uh, Great idea. The It's funny because Johnny can kind of be the goofball. He's the levity in some of these serious situations, and I think Peter Parker can bring that. But also, he's he can help. He can be more helpful from a intelligence standpoint to fit the needs of the Fantastic Four. He has the capacity. He has the strength. Right. That's fine. That's covered. That's baseline. And he's friends with the family. Easy. But now he has the added benefit of being a super genius as well to help out alongside Valeria and Reed. So it
Mm.
felt tactical from Johnny's end because he had that note.
Right.
I think, and Johnny and Peter, were longtime friends. Even before all this, like there was a period of time where they were roommates. Probably leading up to this. And I think, like you say, he's a longtime family friend. Like him filling that gap, just makes sense. And I think that he fills he fills Johnny's role in the what's the word, the archetype. He fills the archetype uh very, very well. um I think though I can't remember this period of time in relation to Spider-Man and how, everything that happened. I felt he was a little underused. I felt, I know Hickman was doing a lot with this title already, but I really felt like it was a bit of a mistake to not show like a day in the life of Spider-Man in the FF. How is that materially different for him and for them?
I can definitely see that. The idea that Spider-Man was underutilized. I think he was a great choice to add for all the reasons you guys said. And I think he was fun. I think he was very
Mm-hmm.
fun. He was funny. The moments when he's trying to make a quip, but it's like clearly the wrong time, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna just go fuck off. But outside of that, you really could have had anybody there.
Yeah.
And so I think it would have been better to create more situations where having Spider-Man even from a power standpoint, was relevant, or at least utilizing his personality, like the realness of his personality outside of just being a jokester. I
Mm-hmm.
would have appreciated that. That being said, I still really enjoy this version of Peter, 616 Peter, under Hickman's pen. I really, really love reading Hickman writing Peter, and I wish we could have gotten it more.
He had a good voice. I think the characterization was strong. Yeah. Sure.
Um, we get Doom as more of a factor pretty early on in the FF period, which how many issues of FF did you guys actually read?
I did 570 all the way through to 600, including the 11 issues of FF.
Same. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So Doom becomes a part of the cast, and I think that's when I really was like, all right, cool. Now we have a lot more conflict and a lot more drama between the characters. Because prior to this, the drama is really about what's happening to them, but all the characters are good with each other. Now you have the drama of Reed having not told Sue about the bridge and that coming to the forefront. Doctor Doom being a part of the team and Valeria siding with him and that coming to the forefront. So now the dynamic is kind of flipped. And I've really appreciated those early issues and the tension and introducing like not just Doom, but Thinker and Wizard and all these other douchebags, all the villains. I really like that twist. It reminded me a lot of Hoxpox, actually.
The I think the Doom pieces worked. I don't know if I see the connection necessarily. Like I guess the bringing of the villains felt unique in that sense, but it definitely was a cool moment to see how the Fantastic Four, and namely Reed, has to bring in uh different opinions, different thoughts, right? Um, in order to defeat himself, which I thought was cheeky. So yeah, for from that end, I think that makes sense. And the way that Valeria had primed Doom, stroking his ego, making him be like, he was like, oh, I can fix you. We could make this deal. And when he finally called, that's the moment where you're also like, ah, there it is. Okay, cool. Like we'll answer the call selfishly, but also for Valeria, but also to honor the deal, but also to there were so many layers to it. Like
Yeah.
that I thought that was very clever.
Doom, you said something there that I wanted to pick up on. You talked about so okay, the idea that Reed has to accept the opinions and perspectives of others, even people he doesn't like, even people um whose applications of knowledge are wrong or that Reed disagrees with. There's still value in their thoughts. And I love that as a commentary, not just on Reed as a person, but on life and reality in general. You have to be willing, in order to progress, you have to be willing to listen to people who you don't necessarily agree with on everything. There can be common ground. The common ground in this case is they need to stop Reed. And he needs all their minds to be able to see the problem from a different angle. And that's true of life. How many times have you been in a situation where your thinking alone could not get the job done?
Yeah. Why I bring in my nemesis all the time.
Who's that?
Oh, my brother.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, would you guys read a Doom ongoing?
No.
Yes.
Feel like he's the one character who's like he wouldn't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like in a way that makes complete sense.
The reason why I wouldn't want it is because of exactly that. Like, he's not going to change. I don't want him to change. I don't want him to grow. I want him to be who he is. And there's almost a necessity when you do an ongoing series to have a character grow, change, evolve potentially. And I'm not looking for that from Doctor Doom. I also just don't like living in the minds of the villainous characters for too long. It would really depend on the frame. Infamous Iron Man, for example, was a Doctor Doom ongoing.
Mm.
And it was by Bendis and Malieve, and it was solid. But I checked out probably after the first arc. Because I got enough. I was good. Did you happen to read that, Cale?
No, I didn't. I think this was sort of my petering off of Bendis, but also I've never really liked many Iron Man titles, so I just wasn't
Yeah,
into it.
yeah, I feel that. The end of our time with this book for the purposes of this book club is the sort of dealing with the other reads, dealing with the remaining council members and figuring out what to do about all that. And when they're having that sit down conversation in the Baxter building and the Watcher pops up. I don't know about you guys. I was like, "Oh shit."
That was cool. That was real cool. Oh, it's just gonna be, it's just gonna stop a few people. Oh, oh.
And I love that. I love that Reed can look at Valeria and go, "This is completely in her character. Absolutely, she's 1000% my daughter. But god damn it, are we gonna have to clean this up?"
And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like having to accept the nature of a person.
Mm.
Reed has to accept his daughter's nature because it's also his nature. Sue accepts Reed's nature because she loves him and that's his nature. And I love that a lot about this series. No one's trying to change anybody. They're
Mm.
all just trying to say, like, be who you are, but carve out space enough for others to be who they need to be as well. And I think that's a powerful message that Hickman embedded in this story. But yeah, man, when the Watcher pops up,
You
I was like,
know you're
well,
in trouble.
yeah. Because that, go ahead.
I was the Watchers here. Valeria, you're grounded.
Yeah.
Fuck.
You know, fucked up kid. What did you guys think about the wrap up of them going after all the other, well, not all, but some of the other Reeds and Reed's interaction with Doom, the multiversal Reed's interaction with Doctor Doom, the one with the Infinity Gauntlet? I thought that was awesome. A lot of great moments towards the end.
Again, I think my big complaint is going to be that I wish we could have lived with a singular Reed. It really felt like Hickman wanted to do the make the one with the Infinity Gauntlet, the one he had like an arrow on his chest of some kind. It really felt like he was kind of the main Reed,
Yeah.
but it also felt like he never really got the spotlight enough. So I don't know. I kind of felt I felt like it felt like there were so many other things that were going on that they got lost. And by the end of it, like their wrap up or whatever, I was just a bit like, okay, well, I'm glad that's taken care of.
It almost felt secondary because their capture still led to stuff continuing to happen. So
Yeah.
it was like, oh, this was a component of something, but now that they're under wraps, they're just in the hands of these other people, and now that has its own implications. We're gonna have to resolve all of that, like even through technically 602. Um, it's still like we're still dealing with the consequences of like the Inhumans and all the other stuff that comes
Mm.
that comes from it. So like, um, I think the that art felt very much like the middle, but in terms of how it wraps up for those reads in particular, it felt a little clean.
Hot take, maybe. I think that this portion of the book, to me, would have felt better if the Reed that becomes the antagonist is the Maker.
I thought that's where this was all leading to. Like I was waiting for the moment where he like puts on the helmet, like ah, there it is.
Because the Maker, obviously, now the Maker is a very recognizable and loved villain. But the Maker, as we know him, was really handled by Hickman in the Ultimate Universe. And I think it would have been a very interesting sort of tie together between his time in the Ultimate Universe and his time in 616. I think the fact that it's Reed allows you to see the worst possible version of Reed come to light, and our Reed having to deal with that. I think that would have been a very, very interesting way to take the story. Um, it also gives you someone that you know to dislike. The Reed with the gauntlet isn't really a character, right? Like
Yeah.
he's Reed Richards, but he doesn't have his own characteristics really. We don't spend enough time with him. The Maker comes in with a lot of built-in baggage, so to speak. You know who he is, you know what he's done, you know why you don't like him. And if you don't, they can very easily fill you in on all that backstory in a way that's compelling.
Yeah,
I that I don't know. I guess I thought that once, but then it just completely left my mind. But I just looked it up. Uh, the first appearance of the Maker, as you know, as Reed as the Maker, is August 2011. So it would have just happened
So okay,
when all
yeah.
this came out. This, the end of this story. I don't think Spider-Man would have even happened
and the Maker
yet.
was an ultimate
No, 2012. Yeah,
Ultimate
the first
Universe, yeah.
Ultimate. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it probably wasn't something that was on his radar, but I stand by the idea that had that been possible, this would have felt a little stronger. Um I do feel like the ending kind of, I think clean is a good way to describe it, as Marco said. It also just doesn't feel as like bombastic. Like it doesn't reach those same highs that I was feeling when we were in the 3 arc.
Hmm.
Um, it just felt like, all right, we got to wrap this up and do the next thing. I thought the Inhumans war and all that was just like, whatever, dude.
Yeah. And
Gymnastics.
in terms of the reads, like it definitely like it feels like a peter out of like the insane level of um possibility that they're introduced with.
Yeah. Right. Ultimately, they don't really do anything. Like we see them do so many things that blow Reed's mind when they're first shown, and then they don't do anything cool again.
They feel depowered. Like suddenly
Yeah.
suddenly they're pushovers. Like and they're conniving in the background. They are trying to bring about, uh, trying to kind of resurrect the world, through these machinations, but it's never to the degree of, well, you guys are 3 reads, like figure it out.
Yeah. One of you has an infinity gauntlet. Just do it. Like,
They
why are
did
you twirling your mustache? Like,
they did clarify it only works in their own
Yeah.
universes.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, fair enough.
But even still, it's Reed Richards.
Thrice.
Yeah, exactly. Times 3. Well, this is one of the craziest actual like feats or moments in this run. When the Reed with the gauntlet is like, "Hey man, we got these Celestials," and he tells the Reed with the portal in his chest, "I need access to my dimension." So he opens his own chest up. Homie sticks his hand inside the chest and then uses the gauntlet to shit on the Celestials. That was insane. And I'm like, "Where's that?
Yep.
Do that."
Yep.
They figured it out.
Burn out another homie.
But yeah, that's really the end of our reading with this book. I think it ends in a place that's interesting. I still want to know what comes next and read it all. And I don't remember if I did eventually read it all or not.
I was gonna ask you, like, where do you remember like ending it?
I don't remember. I don't. I'd have to check my floppies to be honest to see like what I actually bought. Um, but I remember being pretty frustrated during the 3 arc. So I don't remember if I kept reading. But yeah.
I feel like I would have read. I know I checked them out from the library, so I would have read whatever they had.
How do you guys rate this as a Fantastic Four story? I'm not saying like you have to give a number, but you know, ultimately, how do you feel about this as a Fantastic Four story? Would you recommend it? And what kind of a representation is this of the Fantastic Four? Because a lot of people want to read those comics now. Is this a good place to go with them?
Absolutely. Fantastically. I think the representation here with the Fantastic Four, especially for Reed, I think gives him a new dimension, similar to the way people think about Superman.
Yes.
It takes him away from a one track character. And it reminds you that this guy is a person with an entire family that he has to not only interact with and remember that they exist, but he's a good member of it. He's a good member of the team, and he's not just a stern paternal figure. By the time you get to the Johnny stuff, like the the arcs have been so sort of single shot that by the time you're there, things are again threading together, um, in just the most fantastic way. Um, it 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 feels like, well, it feels bad by the time Johnny dies, but it feels so good. Like it's foreshadowed. And you feel it. It feels right, but it hurts.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing that you can say is that not only does Hickman understands these characters, he makes you understand these characters, and uh, he makes them feel like family, and he makes them entertaining. Absolutely, 100% recommend.
Yeah, this this probably stands as the best thing that I've read of Fantastic Four. It made me feel so much, and I think it brought about new understanding for each of the characters. And if you're able to do that, I think that's a very successful creative team. Um, the I would definitely recommend this I think it's new reader friendly in the sense that for a few of these, you can actually. There are going to be some moments where if you're not as seasoned, you might get thrown off and confused. But I think the core emotional beats will connect you to what can be comics, and I think that's just as important. Is this is what you can do with superheroes, with a family, with a team dynamic, and so I really think that this is something that if you're looking for things to fill the Fantastic Four void, research, go back, or you're getting ready for the movie, yeah, this is great. This is great reading so that you have an understanding of who these characters are.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hickman is a perfect writer for the Fantastic Four. The way he thinks about stories and the way he builds his stories. He always does really well with ensemble casts, and he made the Fantastic Four into an even greater ensemble cast than it already was. He handles everybody really well. I think you could make the argument that some characters are more underserved than others. I definitely agree. But that being said, Human Torch gets a big moment. Thing has multiple big moments. Sue probably less so. I think she's the most underserved of this run. And to be honest, that's something that Hickman has been criticized for a lot of times, his writing of women characters. Um, but that aside, I think he's full of big ideas. The Council of Reeds is all over the place as a concept. People love that now. And I think he sort of redefined how important the Fantastic Four are to Marvel, especially if you look at what comes after with Secret Wars. That's a Fantastic Four story by and large, and it's the capper of this. So this run is perfect for a new reader. I think it's a great place to start if you're curious about Hickman's sort of thesis on Marvel. Um, and I would recommend this, especially right now with everything that's going on with the movie. 10 out of 10. It's phenomenal.
Pass. Oh, sorry,
Pass.
pull.
Sit on to other people.
There you go.
There it is. Fixed it. Solved it.
You know what? I we neglected to really touch on the art too much, and that's my fault. We had Dale Eaglesham, Neil Edwards, Barry Kitson for a little bit, and Steve
Yep.
Epting for a little bit. Who was your favorite, and were there
Dracoda.
any Dracoda, excuse me. Who was your favorite, and were there any standout moments from them?
Boy, Epting and Eaglesham, uh, to me were the two that really stood out to me. Um, Probably because they had like the biggest moments. Um, Epting, like especially off the back of the Captain America Winter Soldier book club that we did. The way he draws the Silver Surfer was just incredible.
Hell yeah.
He had so much power in a way that made me go like normally I have like a cringe reaction when the Silver Surfer shows up is oh, okay, fine, yeah, let's go. But even I went, oh damn, okay, he's here, let's fucking go. And then Johnny's death and everything, like just incredible. And then Eaglesham was really interesting for me because I typically am not crazy about his art, but I realized something about his figures is they have he is almost a modern somebody might have to fact check my uh uh likenesses here, but I'm thinking like a modern uh John Romita Sr. He's
Okay.
got like strong chins, very almost like romantic comics, romance comics character faces. They're very either square or sometimes the women are pointed like in the face. But especially with Reed, um, they're jacked as hell.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of makes it like a lot more modern. Um, I just found myself really enjoying his art in the first part of um this story. I was not crazy about Dragotta this time around. And this is early Dragotta. We said his thing was fantastic, obviously, obviously incredible, but there were definitely some facial things that really bugged me, especially in the funeral issue.
Yeah.
Um, his Sue Storm, just like, boy, I did not enjoy looking at that face.
Hawkeye and his look like one of the eyes was going this way and I this way. Um, I thought Eaglesham was really strong. It I don't know if I see the Ramita senior comparison, but it definitely feels like an X-Men artist at some point has done something similar, but updated, maybe not an
Yeah,
astonishing,
yeah,
but um, I thought overall well done. Like anytime they switched off too, it didn't feel as drastic, so I was very appreciative of that. It was all similar style, simple panel layouts, nothing flashy. It's just good, straightforward storytelling, and I think that that's really important. There are moments where you have these big, bombastic elements, and in those instances, knocked it out of the park because there was time and dedication put into those pages to get as much detail out of them. Um, but in other smaller moments, I mean, it was just a good representation of what you needed to do to communicate what was going on in the issue. And there were some instances of like silent pages, silent issues, the underwater sequence as well, a couple pages of underwater and not being able to talk, so you have to really represent things correctly, find the right continuity of actions. Um, incredibly effective communicators and storytellers. Uh, Hickman was paired with a really strong team, so especially considering he's dealing with all these crazy concepts, I feel like they ground him.
I love Steve Epting so much. He is just a phenomenally talented artist. It's no shade against Dale Eaglesham because I think he did a great job too. I just really connect with Epting's art style. This is a book that mostly looked really great, and there aren't a ton of there's not a lot of crazy panel work going on. This is really even sort of before we started to get a lot of panelists doing wild things with the panel layouts at Marvel and DC. But that being said, Steve Epting and Dale Eaglesham are two of the best of this era for sure, at the least. And they do a tremendous job. There are a lot of really cool visual moments in this run. I think Galactus always looks great. That matters a lot to me. Silver Surfer looked badass, like Cale said. So there are a lot of really cool pieces. I will say that I didn't really like the Neil Edwards stuff. Um,
yeah, yeah. His stuff felt often it was very uneven.
yeah.
The facial work a lot of times was different from panel to panel, and then later on, suddenly he was Brian Hitch.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I just not it for
Weird,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was weird how many big moments happened under his. I mean, I guess not weird. Like he's on the Fantastic Four, right? But um, how many big moments happened while he was doing the art?
Well, he drew, I have it here. He drew 573, 4, 580, 81, and 82. So 81, 80, 81, and 82 are pretty pivotal issues. And then we go into the Epting piece. So yeah, I agree.
That's
I was a
wait,
little
man.
surprised.
That was only 5 issues that you just listed.
Yes. Yep.
Boy, it felt like a lot more.
everybody with in Edwards, yeah, I could see the faces. Everybody had like muscles on muscles. Um, and in particular, I think the coloring there was like airbrushy. Um,
Hmm.
not waxy, but definitely had a sheen to it, and that I didn't appreciate.
You never do.
Never, yeah,
It's a
never do.
wax. Sheen, not Marco.
Way, man.
So, chat, we would love to hear from you guys at this point. If there are things that we haven't mentioned that you want us to talk about, if you want to, give us your thoughts on the book. I see a bunch of you have left a lot of you have left comments already. So we'll dive into those. And then after a few minutes of that, we're gonna let you know the subject of the next book club. And we're gonna get the nomination process going. So let's see. Let's see. What comments can we pick out here?
I've got one here from Emily, the goaltending drummer. We were talking about Reed and the Maker. They say that Maker was a newer thing at the time, and I assume Hickman didn't have an idea to include it. I assume if Hickman had kept on Fantastic Four, you probably would see a Maker versus Reed story.
Yeah.
I think and I believe that there was a like massive mandate to never cross Ultimate and 616 until Bendis did it with Spider-Man. Men.
You're 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think it would have been an option.
Yeah.
This is my first FF solo book, and I started it for the book club, so I feel confident saying this is very newbie friendly. Here, pass this off to somebody. And then Rami Darwish says recommendation: read it back to back with Hickman's Avengers run and Secret Wars. Oh yeah, might just do that. Might just go run through this.
That's the epic, dog. Like
Yeah.
that's the Hickman special.
But you got to read Avengers though.
Yeah.
You got to read Avengers.
Bendis.
No, Hickman. It's right after this. And
Yep.
there are a lot of things that are carried over cuz Reed is a part of the Illuminati and the
Right.
new Avengers book is an Illuminati book. So, yeah, a lot of those concepts carry over. I really want to do that. Well, we did it for a book club, didn't we?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was uh not Invasion. The Thanos one,
Thanos Imperative.
Imperative, and then into Secret Wars. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Oh God, that's such a good fucking run. It really is. Patrick Zay said, I love the duality of Hickman's writing. Reed and Valeria sound like super geniuses, whereas characters like Spidey and Thing sound like your average Joe. It's so natural, it's easy to read.
One thing about Reed that really clicked for me while reading this was you don't necessarily like to get to the core of Reed, you don't necessarily have to be like smarter than him. You can turn any you can flip open a science book and find a problem that you can write about. It's that you have to really play to his emotional core, and that's what makes him interesting. People forget that.
Yeah, and I think also, the agility, the mental agility and the talent from a writing standpoint to be able to write Reed in a way that's true to voice, but then also write Ben in a way that's true to voice. Like finding their voices and not leaning so heavily into Reed that all of a sudden everybody sounds like Reed, or dumbing Reed down to where he sounds like everybody else. The one line of dialogue that was repeated multiple times for Reed that I thought it was funny, it wasn't really a flaw, but it just didn't sound right coming out of his mouth, was he says cool multiple times.
I thought it was interesting for sure.
I was like, I don't know about that for Reed.
I
But
can't hear that.
yeah.
Gonna fit there. Indubitably.
My mom once said that my parents split up when I was young, but uh my dad was like at the time was like a Bart Simpson type. And she said, I'll never say the word cool because your dad says it.
Wow.
And it was like such a weird thing to say. And I'm sitting here like, as you say that about Reed, I'm going like, yeah, well, like, of course he probably said it, but like, it's weird.
It is, yeah. I got used to it after a while, I guess, but I was like, okay. All right, Reed. David Melendez Doria said, every son deserves his father isn't only a thing about it's nice to have a dad. It points to the cycles and challenges children inherit from them. Loved that recurring theme. It's a great comment, David.
100%. Yeah. Valeria's learning that. Franklin's learning that. The Moloids are learning that.
Yep.
I have one from Emily, the goaltending drummer. Franklin is the best version of an overpowered character. He has the power to do anything, but he's too immature to use it. It would be a shame if he was retroactively made not a mutant and remove his power, and his powers were removed again. Cough, Dan Slott, cough.
So what Emily is referring to is the fact that during Dan Slott's Fantastic Four run, Hickman was busy with the Krakoan Age. And clearly, Franklin was going to play a role in that because if you guys will recall, there are early issues where the X-Men and FF are in conflict
That's
over
the
Franklin.
first issue.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
That's where it
And
starts. Yeah.
and so Dan Slott in real time decided to depower Franklin, and a byproduct of that was that Hickman could not do anything with the character.
Forgot about that. And then
Yeah.
didn't he like re-get it back in? Vaguely, I remember something about like some imaginary state or some world or something.
I don't recall, but I'm pretty sure Franklin is depowered still now. I think.
I thought that got resolved.
Maybe I'm mistaken, but I'm reading Fantastic Four and I don't think he has powers. So
Still,
um
powers are cool as shit.
yeah. Well, they're hard to manage. It's hard for writers to figure out what to do with a character that's all powerful. And I think Hickman handled it really well. He's a kid.
And he got Leech. He's rooming with Leech.
Yeah.
That
That
was
was
sick.
that was so funny when they're like when Leech is running around, punch, punch, and we're just like, what are you saying? And Valeria obviously like it just comes out. She's like, hit him in the face. So funny.
Oh man. Yeah, that was a great moment. So many great moments throughout this run. Any other good comments to track down here? Let's see. Chris Lister. I don't did we read this? Reed seems to be one of the most misunderstood characters in comics. Nobody seems to agree on what his character is.
Mm.
I think a lot of the conversation about Reed being mischaracterized in Civil War, to me personally, has always felt like a bit of that. Because Reed, to me, has that in him, but he also has Ryan North's Reed in him.
Mm.
He's not he's not one dimensional. And I think Hickman balanced Reed really well, better than arguably any other writer I've seen tackle the character, where he's not a soulless, cold person, but he's also not like such a happy-go-lucky family man that he's not doing Reed Richards shit.
Yeah. And it's I feel like it's also just very clearly like people who aren't reading the Fantastic Four that have no idea how he actually is.
Right. Yep. Oh, it was Infinity. That's right. Thank you,
Yeah,
Emily.
yeah,
Not
yeah, yeah.
not Thanos Imperative.
Thanos Imperative was part of it.
Thanos
Was it?
Imperative was it was the
Doesn't matter.
third part of the cosmic annihilation story, if I remember correctly. So it's annihilation, then it's War of Kings, then it's Thanos Imperative. And that's the one where he's got a son. What was his Thane? I think his son's name is. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, now I think is a great time to talk to you guys about the future of the book club
Setting that foundation.
for the
Whoa.
future.
Wow. Interesting. Fantastic.
So, as you guys know, there are two superhero movies coming out in July. Fantastic Four First Steps is just one of them. The other is a little movie called Superman. And so, because of that,
Hmm.
next month we're running it back. We did a Superman month last year. We're doing another one this year because July
Whoa.
is Superman month at the Comics Pals. And so, what we want, and you guys will know when the threads are live, is we want you guys to nominate your favorite Superman stories of all time, and we will take the top four nominated books, put them up on a poll on Patreon. It will be any tier supporter can vote. Those four books will fight it out, and then we'll be right back here at the end of July to talk about the winning book.
So probably the only exception we'll put down is the John Byrne Man of Steel run.
Right. Yep.
At least the first volume or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's the one we did last year.
Exactly. Yep. So whether it's All-Star Superman, as Near suggested in the chat, or Up in the Sky, as Hayden's Hideout suggested in the chat, which I've never read. There's a lot of scuttlebutt about that book.
That's that
The
Tom King one.
Tom King, and I want to say one of the Kuberts.
Yeah, sounds right.
No to
So
Superman smashes the Klan.
why not?
Boy, we haven't done that one in years.
Yeah, that was ages ago.
I was in New Zealand when we did that.
Crazy. Yeah, so we will let you guys know when you can start the nomination process. As a reminder, it is free. You don't have to pay us $1 or a cent to nominate a book. The nomination threads will be up on Discord, YouTube, and Patreon, again, completely free. And hopefully we can get a ton of nominations this time around. Because I want to see it I want a friction. I want to see what you guys are going to choose. I feel like Hickman kind of ran with it, which is not what I expected. So hopefully we can get a good running in there. It should be fun.
Friendly competition this summer of Superman.
That's
Hell
how
yeah.
he would want it.
Yes, exactly.
Just friendly competition.
All right, you guys. With that, we are going to get out of here. Thank you so much for listening. Hit the like button on your way out. The next time we will be live with you is just 2 days away, Thursday, for Pals Pulls. In order to know what we're going to be talking about on Pals Pulls, go give a listen to Pals Previews this week, which you guys have listened to so much that it is now our #1 ranked video in the last recent history. So thank you guys for that.
Oh, hell yeah. That's as of my looking at this right now, it's 964 views, which is huge for us at the moment. That's a 1 day turnover.
Hell yeah.
Yes. So let's get those numbers up. We'll see you on Thursday for Pals Polls. Enjoy the rest of your night. Take care, guys.
See you next month.